It's sign the damn papers, Bill. You're just a useless relic stinking up my house. The words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken undercover. My son-in-law, Robert, the shiny district attorney with his perfect suit and smug grin, stood in my own kitchen waving a stack of documents like a death sentence. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air from the breakfast I'd ruined earlier, mixed with the citrus sting of lemon polish he'd rubbed on the counters as if to erase any trace of me. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the silence right before his second blow. "Look at you," he sneered, glancing at the wrinkled shirt I'd worn all day. "Used to be a cop. Now you can't even keep yourself clean. You reek of the past." Laughter rippled from the dining room. His friends, colleagues in pressed shirts and shiny shoes chuckled politely, pretending it was all just a harmless joke. My daughter stared into her wine glass, lips pressed tight. In front of them, plates of roasted chicken and garlic bread steamed. In front of me, a cold slice of microwave pizza sliding off a paper plate. Robert tossed the papers onto the table so they landed inches from my hand. The plastic sleeves crackled like static. Power of attorney, bold letters, empty lines waiting for my signature. "Sign it. Let adults handle the future," he said. Then, like it was nothing, he stepped to the wall and ripped my keys off the hook. The ones with the little brass tag, the ones I'd carried since my wife was alive. He dangled them in front of me like a trophy. The dog, Max, lying under the table, lifted his head. His ears twitched. He growled low, a sound that vibrated against my leg. Even he could smell the rot in Robert's words. Robert smirked and dropped the keys into his pocket. "See? Even the mutt knows who's in charge now." My hand tightened around the fork. I looked at the photograph of my late wife on the fridge, the one Robert had knocked down last week and shoved back with a greasy magnet. Her smile was smeared with dried yogurt, her eyes blurred under a thumbprint. The laughter faded. The hum of the fridge grew louder. My daughter still didn't look at me. And in that silence, something in me broke free. I wasn't dead. Not yet. If you've ever been humiliated at your own table, hit subscribe right now. Write your name and your city in the comments. I'll read every single one who stays with me until the end. Because this story doesn't end here. Robert thought he buried me with papers and laughter, but I'll bury him with the truth. It was 6:15 a.m. when the old wall clock in the kitchen clicked so loud it almost drowned out the hum of the fridge. I sat there with a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, flipping through the same stack of yellowed newspaper clippings I'd read 100 times. Front page, undercover cop brings down corrupt housing ring. My picture was smaller than the headline, but it was there. I could still smell the mildew of the basement where we cracked that case wide open. My hands remembered the adrenaline. My chest remembered the pride. Now, the only smell around me was burnt toast. The toaster had coughed up 2 blackened slices, and I ate one anyway. The other sat in the trash can, curling up like old paper. Max, my shepherd mix, rested at my feet. His breathing was steady, heavier than mine. I leaned down, scratched his ear. "Remember when we used to run 5 miles every morning?" He thumped his tail against the linoleum once, as if to humor me. The floor creaked behind me. Robert's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. "Jesus, Bill, you burn toast every damn day. No wonder the house smells like a nursing home." He came in wearing a pressed suit already, hair slick, cologne sharp enough to sting my nose. He opened the fridge, grabbed the last container of leftover chicken, and popped it open without asking. The scent of garlic and lemon filled the room. My dinner from last night. The one I hadn't touched because I'd dozed off in front of the TV. "Gonna have to fumigate this place when you're gone," he added casually, chewing cold chicken like it was nothing. "You know, they say memory loss is contagious. Hope it skips the kids." My jaw tightened. I set the mug down a little too hard, coffee sloshing onto the table. "I'm not losing my memory." Sure, Robert smirked, pulling his phone from his pocket. "But hey, we should talk about autopay. Why don't you give me your card info? I'll set up all the utilities, save you the trouble of, forgetting." Max growled low, almost inaudible. Robert glanced at him, then at me. "Even your dog looks tired of the act." I didn't answer, not yet. My eyes drifted back to the newspaper clipping, the headline glowing in the strip of morning sun cutting through the blinds. Once, I exposed men like him. Once, my work meant something. I folded the paper, slid it back into the folder, and looked him dead in the eye. "Be careful, Robert. Trouble has a way of circling back." He chuckled, licking chicken grease off his thumb. "Not to me, old man. Not to me." The next afternoon, I sat in the armchair by the window, sorting through a pile of envelopes. Most were junk: insurance flyers, pizza coupons, urgent car warranty offers. But one, from Blue Shield, caught my eye. The coverage change notice. I slid my finger under the flap. Max barked once at the sound of tearing paper, then settled again. My eyes ran over the lines, each word hitting like a jab. Policy terminated. Non-payment. I blinked. I hadn't missed a payment in 30 years. My pension covered the basics. I reached for my checkbook in the drawer, the one I kept lined with neatly folded receipts. The checkbook was gone. The front door opened with a rush of cold air, and Robert's voice filled the living room before I even turned my head. Looking for this? He dangled the checkbook between two fingers like bait. His tie was loose, his jacket draped over one arm. He dropped the book on the coffee table with a soft thud, then tossed another envelope beside it. This one already opened. My name on the front, but his fingerprints all over the contents. "Relax," he said, grinning. "I canceled the policy. Waste of money. You don't need all that coverage. You've got me." My throat tightened. You had no right." "Correction," he interrupted, pacing in front of the TV. "I've got every right, since you clearly don't know how to manage basic stuff anymore. You think you're still on the force? This isn't the old days, Bill. This is real life. And in real life, old cops don't need platinum plans. They need babysitters." I felt heat rise in my chest. My hand clenched on the armrest until the fabric wrinkled. Max stood up now, ears perked, staring at Robert like he was a stranger. "Don't give me that look," Robert muttered, pointing at the dog. "He'll be better off at Golden Oaks anyway. Pet therapy, I hear. You can pet him on weekends when they let you out of your room." The laugh he gave after that was sharp, meant to slice. I forced myself up from the chair, joints aching, but my voice came out steady. "You went behind my back. You think you're saving money? You're digging a hole." Robert leaned closer, lowering his voice, a sour mix of coffee and cologne on his breath. "The only hole here, Bill, is the one you're falling into. And when you're too far down, no one's pulling you back up." He straightened his tie, grabbed his jacket, and walked out like he'd won another case in court. The door slammed. I stood there in the silence, paper trembling in my hand, the word terminated blurring in my vision. Max pressed his head against my knee, a soft weight against the storm inside me. The HOA meeting was held in the community hall off Laurelwood Drive, a low-ceiling room that always smelled like bleach and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in that sickly hospital glow. Folding chairs scraped the linoleum as neighbors shuffled in, balancing Costco cookie trays and paper cups of lukewarm coffee. I took a seat near the back, Max lying quietly at my feet. He hated these meetings as much as I did, but rules said dogs were allowed if leashed. Robert was already up front, leaning against the podium like it was his personal stage. Perfect smile, sleeves rolled just enough to look casual, a cup of Starbucks in hand. He fit right in, slick, confident, untouchable. When the agenda got to security concerns at the gates, Robert cleared his throat, eyes sliding deliberately toward me. "Last week," he began, his voice smooth, "we had a minor issue at the south entrance. Someone left the gate propped open. It's not safe." A few heads turned. My stomach sank. I'd walked Max there late at night, propped the gate with a brick because the latch stuck. Robert sipped his coffee, let the silence stretch. Then he smirked. "Look, I don't want to point fingers." He paused and the smirk widened. "But when an ex-cop can't even remember to lock a gate, maybe it's time we rethink who's keeping watch in our neighborhood." Laughter, thin and nervous, rippled through the chairs. Someone coughed to cover a chuckle. A woman muttered, "He's not wrong." Heat crawled up my neck. "That latch has been broken for months," I said, voice steady but louder than I meant. "Anyone could have left it open." Robert leaned forward on the podium, eyes glittering. "Sure, Bill. Anyone. But who else was out there at 11 p.m. with their mutt? We all know." Max growled low, ears flat. "Easy, boy," I whispered, stroking his head. My hand shook, not from fear, but from holding back. The HOA chair cleared her throat, tried to steer the meeting back. "Okay, let's move on." But Robert cut in again, laughing. "Hey, I'm just saying, if he forgets gates, what's next? Forgetting the stove on? We can't afford accidents around here." This time the laughter was louder, real, at my expense. I pushed back my chair, the legs screeching against the floor. All eyes snapped to me. "Careful, Robert," I said, every syllable like glass. "One day you'll choke on your own jokes." The room fell silent. The only sound was the hum of the lights and Max's steady growl. Robert raised his cup in a mock toast. "I'll drink to that, old man." He took a long sip, grinning over the rim. I sat back down, my fist balled in my lap, every muscle screaming to stand again. But I didn't. Not yet. That night the house felt colder than usual. The old furnace kicked on and off with a hollow rattle, never quite warming the rooms. I sat in the kitchen with the TV humming in the background. Channel 7 news anchors talking about traffic on the 101 and a hit and run in Daly City. The smell of reheated soup clung to the air, thin, salty, the kind of meal you eat because there's nothing else. Max lay curled by the back door, ears twitching at every creak. I flipped absently through the folder of clippings again, fingers pausing on a headline from '92. Undercover sting exposes bribery ring. My photo was there, young and sharp-eyed, badge half hidden under a jacket. For a second, I could almost feel the old rush. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps. Robert's voice filled the house like static. "Turn that down, Bill. Nobody cares about car accidents at midnight." He strode into the kitchen still in his suit, tie loose, jacket slung over his arm. He reeked of whiskey and expensive cologne. Without asking, he opened the fridge, pulled out a can of beer, popped it. The hiss of carbonation cut across the anchor's voice. I didn't move. "There's soup on the stove." "Soup?" He laughed, the sound dry, sharp. "Yeah, I had dinner, real dinner, not this retirement home menu." He dropped into the chair across from me, spreading papers across the table. White sheets, crisp edges, yellow tabs marking lines to sign. Max lifted his head, growled low. Robert glared at him. "Shut him up, or he'll end up in the pound when you're gone." My chest tightened. "What's this?" I asked, though I already knew. He tapped the top page with his index finger, nail clicking on the line where my name was printed in bold. "Power of attorney, neat, simple. You sign, I handle the bills, the property, the business. Everyone wins." He leaned back, swigged his beer, foam clinging to his lip. "And just so you know, Golden Oaks has an opening Thursday morning. Nice place. Clean sheets, staff that know how to handle forgetful old cops. Honestly, you'll thank me when you're not tripping over yourself here." The news anchor's voice droned on in the background, but I didn't hear the words anymore. My eyes locked on the papers, then on the magnet-smeared photo of my wife still crooked on the fridge. Robert shoved the pen toward me. The plastic clattered against the wood. "Sign it, Bill. Do the one useful thing you've got left." The furnace kicked on again, loud, shaking the ducts. Max pressed against my leg, tail stiff, eyes fixed on Robert. I didn't touch the pen, not tonight. But inside, something shifted. Sharp, cold, steady. I knew then, he thought he'd won. He thought Thursday would be my funeral in everything but name. He had no idea who he was burying. Thursday morning, 9:45 a.m. The house smelled of bleach. Robert had sprayed the counters himself, scrubbing hard, like he wanted to erase me along with the coffee stains. My hands wrapped around a chipped mug, half full of cold coffee. Max shifted at my feet, restless. Then the knock came, sharp, official. Robert walked in from the hallway already smiling, jacket buttoned, cologne too strong. Behind him stepped a woman in a dark blazer carrying a slim black case. "Mr. Hayes, I'm Sarah, notary public. This won't take long." She said it the way nurses announce a flu shot. Robert dropped a stack of papers onto the table, the same ones from Monday night, only this time neatly arranged with yellow flags sticking out. He pulled out a chair for her, like he was hosting a dinner guest. "It's see, Dad? Nice and simple. 10 minutes, and all your worries are over." My jaw tightened. I hadn't agreed. I hadn't signed, but they came anyway. Sarah pulled out her pen, her stamp, set them down with a soft click, the smell of toner and plastic sleeves mixed with the citrus cleaner. "All you need to do," Robert said, sliding the papers toward me, "is sign right here. Then you can relax. Golden Oaks is ready for you." The dog let out a sharp bark. Sarah flinched. Robert glared at Max. "Control that animal." "He smells something foul," I muttered. Robert laughed, loud, performative. "See? He still thinks he's witty. Tell you what, Sarah, once this is done, I'll have his room ready by tonight." I glanced at the photo of my wife on the fridge, smudged, crooked, my throat burned. Sarah looked at me carefully. "Mr. Hayes, do you understand what you're signing?" I met her eyes, steady. "Oh, perfectly, and I'm not signing today." Her brows lifted. Robert slammed his hand flat on the table, rattling the mug. "Don't start this circus, Bill. You're embarrassing everyone. Just sign it. The room went still except for the hum of the fridge and the dog's growl. I pushed the papers back toward him. If you're so desperate, Robert, maybe you're the one who should be signing. His face twitched only for a second. Then the smile returned, sharp as glass. Fine. Have it your way. But you just made this harder on yourself. Sarah packed her case. The stamp never touched the paper. As the door closed behind them, Robert shot me a look that promised more than words. Max pressed against my leg, steady and warm. For now, I'd bought time. But I knew the next attack wouldn't come in my kitchen. It would be out there, in public, where humiliation cuts deepest. The bank was freezing the way only banks and hospitals can be. Air conditioning blasted down from the vents while a line of people shuffled forward under the soft ding of the now-serving screen. The floor shone like a wet sidewalk. The pens were chained to the counters. Everything smelled faintly of toner, cold coffee, and someone's too-strong perfume. I took a number, B126, and stood with my hands around the little brass key to my safe deposit box. Max wasn't allowed inside. I'd tied him to the bike rack out front, where he watched the doors with the patience only a good dog has. Next, the teller called. Her name tag read, Alicia. I stepped up and slid my ID across. Morning, I need to check activity on my accounts. And the box. She tapped, brows knitting. There was an attempt to link an external account yesterday. It was declined pending authorization. She glanced at me over the monitor. Did you request that, Mr. Hayes? No. The doors hissed open behind me. Robert's voice hit me before the blast of warm air did. Perfect. Saves me a trip. He strode up, phone in one hand, a folded set of papers in the other. We're adding me as POA. He's forgetful. It's a public safety thing. Alicia blinked. Sir, we can't discuss the customer's accounts without proper documentation. Robert laid the documents on the counter like a magician placing his cards. Documentation? Sure. Notarization in progress. He's resisting for now, but we both know where this ends. He tilted his head toward me with a smile just big enough for the lobby to notice. Be a good sport, Bill. Don't make a scene. People in line angled to watch. A kid clutched his mother's hand and whispered. The security guard shifted his weight, radio crackling softly. We'll speak with the branch manager, I said. Robert flashed teeth. Great idea. They led us to a glass-walled office where the AC hummed like distant surf. Manager. Paul sat behind a desk that looked too big for the room. Robert took the visitor chair without being asked, spread the papers, and started talking before the door latched. Here's the situation. He's moving to Golden Oaks Thursday. I'll be handling bills, property, the works. He misplaces things, leaves gates open. Everyone knows this. We need immediate access to ensure continuity of care. Paul folded his hands. Do you have a signed power of attorney? Robert's smile didn't move. In motion. Then there's nothing to grant, Paul said, calm as a metronome. Until a valid executed document is presented, control remains with Mr. Hayes. Robert's cheek twitched. He leaned in, lowering his voice to make it sound reasonable. Look, off the record, this man was an undercover cop decades ago. Now he can't manage toast. Today it's money. Tomorrow it's a fire. I placed the brass key on Paul's desk. It gleamed under the LED light. This is my box. I want a note placed. No third-party access, no changes, no links. And I want my contact info updated to my cell only. Paul nodded. We can add a hold note and confirm alerts to your number. That's within policy. Robert laughed, short and sharp. Policy? The policy is that he's done. You're enabling a fall risk with a checkbook. From the lobby, a muffled bark. Max had seen Robert through the glass, and his voice carried in, low and steady. A couple of heads turned toward the doors. Paul typed. The screen cast a pale glow on his hands. Done. Alerts are now text only to you, Mr. Hayes' box. Access updated as requested. Robert stood so fast his chair hit the wall. You're going to feel stupid when the court order arrives this afternoon. Afternoon, I said. My voice didn't rise. Then you won't mind waiting till then. He leaned over the desk, inches from my face, cologne mixing with the sterile bank air. You're not the hero anymore. I slid my ID back into my wallet and picked up the key. Good news, I said. I don't need to be. We walked back into the lobby. The line watched us like a TV show they hadn't meant to see. At the door, Robert couldn't resist the last parting shot. He raised his voice just enough for the room. A folks' friendly PSA, keep an eye on your elders. Some of them don't know when to step aside. I paused under the "thank you for banking with us" sign. The kid by the stanchion stared at me with that worried curiosity children have when adults start breaking. And keep an eye on your elected officials, I said to no one and everyone. Some of them forget who they work for. Outside, Max pressed against my knee, warm and solid. I scratched his neck and breathed the real air. Car exhaust, bakery sugar from the strip mall, a hint of rain trapped in asphalt. Behind the glass, Robert argued with the manager, hands chopping the air, smile finally gone. He thought he'd dragged me into the light to finish me. All he'd done was step onto a stage with me. War wasn't in my kitchen anymore. It was public, and I knew how to work in public. The house was silent except for the relentless tick of the wall clock. Midnight. The red digits on the microwave blinked 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, like a broken signal no one bothered to fix. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee that had gone sour hours ago. Max lay curled at my feet, sighing now and then, his paws twitching in dream chase. I'd called my daughter twice that evening. No answer. The voicemail greeting was Robert's voice. "You've reached the Millers." He said it like I was already excluded from the family name. I tried calling an old partner from the force, Charlie. He used to say, "Bill, if you ever need me, just call." Tonight it went straight to voicemail. The message was shorter now, clipped. Probably his wife had insisted. I flipped through the mail again. A glossy brochure slid free. Golden Oaks Senior Living. Dignity for your loved ones. My name printed on the address label. Robert hadn't even bothered to hide it. I tossed it toward the trash, but it fluttered to the floor instead, face up. Smiling seniors in pastel sweaters. A slogan in bold. Because they deserve the best. Max rose, nudged it with his nose, then pawed at my leg. His eyes were worried. "I'm not going," I muttered. My own voice startled me, cracked and rough. The phone rang. For a moment, hope flared. I grabbed it. A neighbor's number. Tom from 2 houses down. Relief lasted only a breath. "Bill, hey, look, Robert mentioned you've been having some trouble. Forgetting things, leaving gates open. You know the HOA's strict. We're all worried." The words felt rehearsed, like he was repeating lines given to him. "I'm fine, Tom." Better than fine. He's twisting everything. A pause, then a sigh. "I'm sure you believe that. Anyway, just hang in there. Night." The line clicked dead. I set the phone down and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. My own face looked older than I'd ever let myself admit. Lines deeper, eyes tired, but they were still my eyes, still sharp. Max rested his head on my knee. The clock ticked on, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to fear. The diner on El Camino was nearly empty. The vinyl booth sticky from years of syrup and spilled coffee. A TV bolted to the wall played Channel 7 on mute, the anchor's mouth moving without sound, while captions scrolled about a corruption trial downtown. I sat alone with a plate of scrambled eggs that smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals. Max waited in the truck outside, window cracked. I stirred the eggs, but couldn't swallow more than a forkful. 2 booths over, a couple of construction workers laughed over pancakes. One of them glanced my way, then muttered something to the other. I caught a fragment. "Old cop lost it." They laughed louder. I pulled my jacket tighter, as if it could shield me. The waitress, a young woman with tired eyes, set down the check without asking. "Anything else?" "No, thank you." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Your son-in-law was in here last week. Said you're moving soon. He made it sound like you're not doing well." My fork froze halfway to the plate. "He talks too much." She gave a small, nervous smile, then moved on. When I paid at the counter, my card beeped red. The cashier frowned. "Declined." I felt heat crawl up my neck. Pulled out cash. My hands shook slightly as I counted the bills. The cashier's polite smile didn't reach her eyes. Back in the truck, Max pressed his head against my shoulder, as if he could sense the crack running through me. I stroked his fur, steadying myself. At home, the mailbox held another insult. A pharmacy slip. My refill marked picked up. I hadn't picked it up. Someone else had. I called the number. The pharmacist's tone was polite, clipped. "Your son-in-law collected it yesterday. Said he was helping manage your meds." My hand tightened on the receiver. "He's not my guardian," I said. "That's what he told us. If there's an issue, you'll need to resolve it through your family." Click. The empty house swallowed the silence. I sat at the kitchen table again, wrote a single line in my old notebook in the block letters. Stop asking. Start proving. The pen dug deep into the page, tearing it slightly. Max barked once, sharp and sudden, like agreement. And just like that, the fear inside me hardened into something else. It was time. The county clerk's office smelled like dust, toner, and burnt coffee from a machine that hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan years. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, turning every wrinkle on every tired face into deep shadows. I stood at the counter with a request slip in hand. The clerk, a young guy with earbuds dangling from his hoodie, barely looked at me as he typed. What year? He asked. 98 through '02. Property transfers, civil complaints, anything with the name Robert Miller. He raised a brow. That's a lot. Then let's start with 98. He shrugged and disappeared into the back, leaving me alone with the hum of the copy machine and the faded posters about voter registration. Max waited outside in the truck, nose smudging the passenger window. I tapped my fingers on the counter, heart heavier than it had been in years. I hadn't stepped into this building since I was still on the job, testifying in the depositions. Back then, I was the hunter. Today, I felt like the hunted. The clerk returned with a box of files, set it down with a thud. Dust rose like ghosts. Knock yourself out. I pulled a folder free. The name jumped out in bold. Miller, Robert T., Associate Counsel. Inside, complaints about shady land deals, whispers of kickbacks, nothing proven, nothing pursued. But there it was. His name, attached to corruption before his career even launched. My pulse quickened. I flipped faster. Another file. Same name, tied to a building permit scandal. I remembered that case. I'd been undercover, trying to crack it. Names had slipped through the cracks then. Now, those same names were staring back at me. And Roberts was one of them. I photocopied every page I could, feeding them into the groaning machine. Each sheet spat out warm and smelling of toner, piling like ammunition. When the clerk yawned and asked, "You done?" I looked at the stack in my hands and shook my head. Just getting started. Outside, the afternoon sun baked the truck. Max wagged his tail, happy just to see me. I laid the folder on the passenger seat. He sniffed it once, then settled back down. Driving home along El Camino, brake lights stretched ahead in a red line. I glanced at the folder, at the copies fanning out like cards, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the old rush again. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was a case, and I was back on it. The law office sat wedged between a nail salon and a discount liquor store in a strip mall off El Camino Real. The faded sign above the door read, Law Offices of Charles Alvarez, in peeling gold letters. It wasn't glamorous, but it didn't need to be. I pushed open the glass door. The bell jingled weakly, and the smell of cinnamon air freshener mixed with industrial-strength disinfectant hit me. The waiting room was empty except for a stack of outdated Time magazines and a humming Keurig machine. Charlie came out from the back, tie loosened, glasses perched low on his nose. He froze when he saw me, then broke into a grin that softened 20 years of time. Bill Hayes. Damn, thought you'd moved to Arizona or the grave. Not yet, I said, and shook his hand. His grip was firm, real. We sat in his office, leather chairs creaking as we leaned back. The walls were lined with law books that looked more for show than use. A small fan hummed in the corner, pushing warm air in circles. I laid the folder on his desk. The papers spread like cards in a bad poker hand. Look familiar? Charlie adjusted his glasses, scanned the pages. His lips pressed into a thin line. Robert Miller, district attorney, your son-in-law. The same. He's been pushing me toward Golden Oaks, took my insurance, tried to hijack my accounts. I'm not just fighting for my house anymore. I'm fighting him. Charlie flipped another page. These are old, but they're dirty. Land deals, payoffs, conflicts of interest. Stuff that should have buried him back then. But it didn't. And now he thinks he can bury me instead. Charlie leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. You need protection first. Revocation of any presumed powers. Affidavit of capacity. Signed by a doctor, notarized. That way, when he drags you into court, you stand on solid ground. He scribbled notes on a yellow pad, paper crinkling. Wait a second, we lock your assets. Trust, restricted access. Nothing moves without your say-so. You've got to get ahead of him. The pen stopped tapping. He looked me in the eye. You still got fight left, Bill? I thought about the bank, about Robert's grin as he held my keys, about my wife's photo smudged with yogurt. More than ever. Charlie smiled thinly. Then let's build this case, step by step. Just like old times. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a fresh legal folder. On the tab, he wrote, in block letters, Hayes versus Miller. As I left the office, the strip mall buzzed with everyday noise. Kids whining for ice cream, the hum of traffic on El Camino, the smell of fried chicken drifting from the takeout next door. Ordinary life, but in my hands, inside that folder, was the start of war. Max barked from the truck when he saw me, tail thumping against the seat. I scratched his ears, slid the folder beside the old papers, and whispered, "A case is open, boy." The FedEx office on El Camino buzzed with the steady whir of copiers and the faint smell of hot toner. I fed page after page into the machine. Property transfers, complaints. Robert's name stamped like a shadow across 2 decades. Each sheet slid warm into my hands, crisp, smelling faintly of burnt plastic. Max waited in the truck outside again, nose against the glass. Every so often he barked once, short and low, like a warning. I bundled the copies into a thick envelope marked to C. Alvarez, attorney at law. I wrote in bold block letters, confidential. When I slid the package across the counter, the clerk raised a brow. Important papers? Life or death, I said, and didn't smile. That night, I staged another step. Robert came home late, drunk enough to fumble with his tie, but not drunk enough to lose his sneer. I sat in the living room with the TV low, a police scanner humming static on the side table, habit I never broke. "Still playing cop," he muttered, tossing his jacket onto the couch. He leaned against the doorway, swaying slightly. I clicked the old camcorder hidden on the bookshelf. The red light blinked once, then steady. "You've been busy," I said evenly. "Canceling my insurance, hijacking my accounts. You really think that makes you a man?" He smirked. "It makes me smarter than you, old man. Thursday, you'll be drooling into a paper cup while I handle everything. That's a win." I let him talk, let the camera drink every word. My pulse thudded in my ears. Max growled from under the table. Robert kicked the chair leg to shut him up. "Control that mutt before I call animal control." The camera caught that too. He staggered off to bed, leaving the sour stink of whiskey and arrogance in the air. I waited a full 10 minutes before I exhaled, then shut off the camcorder. The next morning, almost everything unraveled. At the USPS counter, mailing another packet to Charlie, I felt a shadow fall over me. Robert stood 3 people behind in line, phone in hand, eyes locked on the envelope. He smiled, just smiled, like a wolf who'd found a scent. I slid the package through the slot faster than I'd planned, my signature scribbled, receipt in my pocket. The clerk stamped it with a dull clunk that sounded louder than a gunshot. Outside, Max barked furiously from the truck, teeth bared at Robert as he walked past, slow, deliberate. He lifted his phone, snapped a photo of my license plate, and mouthed the words, "Too late." I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, but the receipt crinkled in my pocket, proof the package was gone. Safe. I stroked Max's fur, steadying myself. "Almost lost it, boy. But not today." The truck rumbled onto the freeway, brake lights flaring ahead. My pulse slowed. My case was still alive. Charlie's office smelled like takeout and old carpet cleaner when I walked in the next day. The blinds were half closed against the afternoon sun, stripes of light cutting across stacks of case files. He looked up from his desk as I set the camcorder down, the plastic casing scuffed, tape already rewound. "Tell me you got something," he said. I got more than something. He slid the tape into an old player. The screen flickered, grainy but clear enough. Robert's voice filled the room, dripping with arrogance. "Thursday, you'll be drooling into a paper cup while I handle everything." That's a win. Charlie leaned back, a slow smile spreading. Well, well. Arrogance always talks too much. I pulled another envelope from my jacket. Inside, the bank receipts, the pharmacy slip with Robert's forged pickup. His name scribbled on the line where mine should have been. Charlie stacked the papers carefully, then tapped them into alignment. "This isn't just smoke, Bill. This is fire. We've got timeline, motive, abuse of access, and with those old county files, you've got him boxed." For the first time in weeks, I felt my lungs fill without that crushing weight. So he can't just erase this? Not a chance. I've duplicated everything. 1 copy in my safe, 1 with a notary, 1 digital. Even if your house burned down tomorrow, this case lives. I let out a laugh I didn't expect. It sounded rusty, but real. Max barked from outside the door, as if echoing the relief. Charlie leaned forward, eyes sharp. But listen, you don't relax yet? Robert's not the type to roll over. He'll smell this coming. He'll push harder. Let him, I said quietly. He thinks I'm weak. That's his blind spot. Charlie nodded, tapping his pen on the folder marked Hayes Verses. Miller. Then we play it right. When the time comes, it won't just be me and you. There'll be a room full of witnesses, and Robert won't be able to laugh it off. I stood, gathering the small victories in my mind like chips on a table. The affidavit of capacity signed by Dr. Patel, the receipts, the tape, the files. Pieces of a puzzle, finally locking into place. On the way out, I patted Max's head and whispered, "He first bricks in the wall, boy. Now we build it high enough he can't climb out." That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. The microwave still blinked 12 o'clock, but it didn't mock me anymore. I opened my notebook, turned to the page where I'd scrawled, "Stop asking. Start proving." Beneath it, in steadier letters, I wrote, "They can't erase the truth." And for the first time since Robert started his little war, I felt it, momentum. The knock came just after sunset, 3 heavy thuds that rattled the thin glass pane of the front door. Max was up instantly, fur bristling, barking low and sharp. Through the peephole, I saw him. Robert, not alone this time. Beside him stood a man in a navy jacket with a laminated badge clipped to his pocket. Adult Protective Services. Robert smiled wide when I opened the door, too wide. "Bill, this is Mr. Carlson. He's here to follow up on some concerns." Carlson cleared his throat, voice polite but firm. "We received a report about possible self-neglect, unsafe living conditions, confusion. Mind if I come in?" I stepped aside slowly. Max growled, nose twitching at the stranger's shoes. The house was tidy, dishes stacked, trash out, floor swept. But Robert's eyes roamed like he expected to find rot under the rugs. Carlson walked through, jotting notes. "Do you live alone?" Yes. "Any problems with memory, finances, safety?" I caught Robert smirking in the corner, arms crossed. "No problems I can't handle?" Carlson glanced at the blinking microwave clock. "Why's it flashing?" Robert jumped in. "He forgets how to set it." Same with the gate outside. I clenched my jaw. "It's flashing because the power flickered yesterday, and the gate latch has been broken for months. Ask the HOA." Carlson scribbled something, unreadable. Robert leaned closer to him, voice lowered just enough for me to hear. "Look, I just want him safe." He gets agitated, confused, yells at the dog. "We're trying to move him into care by Thursday." Max barked, as if protesting the lie. Carlson finished his walkthrough, snapped his folder shut. "I see no immediate hazards. I'll file a note, but this doesn't rise to intervention." Robert's smile cracked for half a second. Then he recovered, shaking Carlson's hand like they were co-conspirators. "Appreciate your time." When the door closed, Robert leaned in close enough that I smelled the bourbon on his breath. "Nice cleanup, old man, but you can't stage manage forever. One slip and they'll drag you out with cameras rolling." He tapped the side of his nose, winked, and left. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt hard, leaned against the wood. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. He'd tried to weaponize the system against me, and he almost succeeded. I scratched Max behind the ears. "He thinks I'll slip, boy. He's the one slipping." I opened my notebook, scrawled into block letters. "A PS equals strike one. Next time, record everything." 2 days later, the mail came late. The carrier dropped a bundle through the slot, with a hollow slap on the floor. Max patted over, sniffing at the pile. I bent down, sorting envelopes, utility bill, flyer for a car wash, a letter from Charlie's office, except the flap was already torn open. Inside was the affidavit of capacity, notarized by Dr. Patel just yesterday. My name, my date of birth, his signature, proof that I was of sound mind. The paper should have been sealed. Instead, the edge was ragged, the stamp smudged where someone's thumb had pressed too hard. My stomach clenched. "Robert," Max growled, pawing the envelope like he knew it had been tainted. I shoved the paper into a plastic sleeve, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to Charlie's. He frowned as soon as he saw it. "Tampered. He's intercepting your mail. That's a federal crime." "Think he cares?" Charlie shook his head. "We'll reissue. This time straight to me, signed and sealed. No mail slot detours." He pulled a new form, scribbled instructions. Bill, you need redundancy. Duplicates in a safe deposit box, one with me, one digital. That way, if he destroys one, 3 more survive. I nodded, my pulse steadied with the plan. That night, heading back from Charlie's, I noticed headlights in the rearview mirror, too close. Not passing, not backing off. Every turn I made down El Camino, they followed. Max sat up, hackles raised, nose pressed to the glass. I turned down a side street, then another. The car stayed. My palms slicked against the wheel. Finally, I pulled into the Walgreens lot, parked under the harsh white floodlights. The other car idled across the lot, then peeled away with a squeal of tires. I sat there breathing hard, heart hammering, the fluorescent lights buzzing above. Walgreens doors slid open and shut, customers walking in with bags of prescriptions and sodas, unaware of the war raging in my shadow. Max whined softly, pressing against me. I scratched his ears. He's watching. Let him watch. When I got home, the back gate was ajar. I always locked it. Always. My notebook on the kitchen table lay open, though I'd closed it that morning. A single line was underlined in red ink that wasn't mine. Stop asking, start proving. My own words thrown back at me. Robert had been inside. I sank into the chair, cold sweat sliding down my neck. Max paced the kitchen, restless, ears pricked. For the first time, I felt how close I was to losing everything. One mistake, one slip, and he'd have me in a straitjacket before I could breathe. I closed the notebook, locked it in the drawer, and whispered to myself, "Not yet, Robert, not yet." The storm broke on a Friday afternoon. Gray clouds hung low over San Mateo, drizzle streaking the windshield as I pulled into the Chase Bank downtown. In the passenger seat, a manila envelope sat fat with originals, receipts, affidavits, copies of Robert's old cases. Charlie had warned me, deposit one set in a safe deposit box. Make sure nothing touches your house again. Max stayed curled on the back seat, ears twitching every time thunder rolled. Inside, the bank smelled of damp coats and coffee filters. The teller directed me to the safe deposit clerk, a thin woman with hair pinned so tight it pulled her skin. "Box number?" she asked. 422. She pulled the key, walked me down the narrow hallway lined with steel doors. My chest tightened as I slid my key into the lock. The heavy door creaked open. Inside was empty space waiting for protection. I reached into the envelope and froze. It was light, too light. I flipped it open. Half the documents were gone. My pulse spiked. I'd triple-checked before leaving the house. Someone had opened it. Somewhere between my kitchen table and this hallway, Robert had reached in. I staggered back, breath short. "Something wrong?" the clerk asked. "No, we just need a moment." I slid the remaining files inside, locked the box with trembling hands. Then I left the bank, head pounding, scanning every face in the lobby. Outside, across the street, Robert leaned against his car, umbrella hooked over one shoulder, phone in hand. He smiled when our eyes met. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his phone and snapped a picture of me standing there in the rain. Max barked furiously from the truck, paws against the glass. Robert mouthed the words, "Too late," then slid into his car and drove off. I climbed into my truck, heart hammering. The envelope felt like a corpse in my hands. Light, incomplete, wounded. Back home, I tore through the house. Desk drawers, kitchen counters, even the trash. Nothing. The missing documents were gone. Max paced in circles, restless, tail stiff. I sat at the table, head in my hands. For a moment, I felt it. The edge of collapse. Maybe Robert was right. Maybe I couldn't hold this together. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Charlie. "Got duplicates. Everything backed up. Notary has digital copies too. Relax, he can't kill it." Relief hit like air after drowning. I laughed, short and broken, but real. I wrote in my notebook. "He thinks he won. He only took shadows." Max pressed against my leg, steady as ever. I scratched behind his ear and whispered, "We're still in this, boy." Stronger than before, the rain beat harder on the windows, steady and cold. But for the first time in days, I felt anchored. Robert had tried to strip me bare. All he'd done was prove how desperate he'd become. And desperate men make mistakes. The steps of the San Mateo Superior Court felt heavier than any staircase I'd climbed under cover. Reporters clustered near the entrance, microphones in hand, their jackets dark with drizzle. News vans lined the curb, satellite dishes pointed skyward. The buzz of Channel 7's crew mixed with the hum of idling engines. I adjusted my coat, the notebook heavy in my pocket. Max wasn't allowed inside, but he'd pressed his head against my knee before I left, as if giving me the push I needed. Inside, the courthouse smelled of floor wax and nerves. Fluorescent lights glared down, turning faces pale. The courtroom itself was already half full. Neighbors, HOA members, even a few off-duty cops I recognized from long ago. Some nodded when our eyes met. Most just looked curious, waiting for a show. Robert stood at the plaintiff's table, polished to a shine. Perfect suit, hair slick, posture confident. He whispered to his associate, then glanced back at me with a grin that said he'd already won. His wife, my daughter, sat stiff in the second row, hands clenched in her lap, avoiding my gaze. The bailiff called order. The judge entered, robes swishing, glasses perched low on her nose. She scanned the docket. It's case of Miller versus Hayes, petition for guardianship and control of estate. Her voice echoed. The words landed like blows. Guardianship, estate, as if I were already gone. Robert rose smoothly. Your Honor, my father-in-law is a decorated former officer, but time has taken its toll. He forgets to pay bills, leaves gates open, endangers himself and others. This petition is to ensure his safety and the security of his property. He sounded so reasonable, so rehearsed, the perfect prosecutor presenting facts. A few people in the gallery nodded along. I stood slowly, every joint stiff, but my voice steady. With respect, Your Honor, what he calls safety is theft. What he calls care is control, and what he calls facts. I laid my folder on the table, letting the papers fan slightly so the gallery could see. Our lies. A murmur rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching. The judge tapped her gavel once. Proceed carefully, mister. Hayes evidence, not speeches. Robert smirked, adjusting his tie. He's emotional, Your Honor. Confused. I expected as much. I met his eyes, calm. Then let's confuse him with the truth. I opened the folder. The first sheet gleamed under the courtroom lights. The case had begun. I lifted the first document from the folder, the paper stiff in my hand, the notary seal catching the fluorescent light. Exhibit A, affidavit of capacity, signed by Dr. Patel last week, notarized, sealed. It confirms I am fully competent to manage my own affairs. The bailiff carried it to the judge. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the page. The notary stamp gleamed clear and sharp. A low murmur rolled through the gallery. A neighbor I'd known for years whispered, "So he's not losing it?" A Channel 7 reporter scribbled faster, pen scratching across the pad. Robert stood quickly, voice smooth but tight around the edges. Your Honor, any doctor can be misled. We all know patients sometimes mask their decline. This is not unusual. I didn't flinch. Masking decline, I said, loud enough for the back row to hear. You think I staged coherent thought for an entire exam, notarized by a state-certified official? That's your argument? Laughter, short and sharp, flickered from somewhere in the room before the bailiff hushed it. Robert straightened, face flushing. The man has been forgetful. Everyone knows it. Ask the HOA about the Southgate incident. I turned slowly toward the gallery, locking eyes with the HOA chair sitting 3 rows back. She shifted in her seat. The latch was broken, I said. They know it. And Robert knew it when he twisted the story. A murmur again, louder this time. People leaned toward one another, doubt spreading like smoke. The judge tapped her pen against the affidavit. This document is clear. Unless directly refuted, it establishes capacity. Mr. Miller, do you have contrary medical evidence? Robert hesitated, jaw tightening. His associate shuffled papers, whispering. Finally, Robert shook his head. Not at this time, Your Honor. But capacity is more than one document. The judge nodded. Proceed. I set the affidavit down, opened the next tab in my folder. Then let's talk about finances. Robert's eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw something slip behind his grin. A flicker of unease. The case wasn't just about my mind anymore. It was about his hands, and what they'd been caught grabbing. I placed the next set of documents on the table. The stack was thicker, heavier, each page a weight I'd carried for weeks. My hands didn't shake now. They were steady. Like the old days, when I'd slide evidence across an interrogation table and watch a suspect's confidence drain away. Exhibit B, I said. Bank activity reports from Chase, dated within the last 30 days. They show multiple attempts to link my personal account to an external account belonging to Robert Miller. The The bailiff collected the pages, handed them to the judge. She flipped through, frown lines deepening with each page. "Note the dates," I added. "These attempts occurred without my consent." I confirmed with bank staff, who documented the attempted fraud. Their signatures are at the bottom. A low hum filled the gallery. People shifted, whispered. A man 2 rows back muttered, "That's not legal." Robert shot to his feet, smile stretched thin, voice pitched higher than before. "Your Honor, this is a gross misrepresentation. Linking accounts is not fraud, it's convenience. Families do it all the time to manage finances for elders who struggle." I tilted my head, calm. Convenience. Then why did the bank reject it? Why did they flag it as unauthorized and require my personal approval? If it were legitimate, it would have gone through. Robert's jaw tightened. His associate handed him a paper, but his hands shook as he held it. The judge tapped the report. "Mr. Miller, do you have proof that Mr. Hayes authorized this attempt?" Silence. Then Robert cleared his throat. "No written proof, Your Honor, but verbal." The judge cut him off. "Verbal authorization does not supersede bank policy. This attempt is documented as unauthorized." The gallery buzzed louder now. Neighbors leaned forward, eyes on Robert instead of me. Doubt spread across faces that had once laughed at his jokes. I wasn't done. Exhibit C. I slid out a slim slip of paper, simple but damning, a pharmacy receipt. This shows a prescription refill collected under my name, picked up by Robert Miller without my knowledge or consent. Signature line, his. The bailiff passed it to the judge. She squinted at the scrawl. "This is your handwriting, Mr. Miller?" Robert shifted in place, too fast to look comfortable. "I was doing him a favor. He forgets sometimes. I didn't want him to go without his medication." I leaned forward, voice sharp. "That medication was locked in my cabinet. I never missed it. The only thing you wanted was control of my prescriptions, to build a case that I couldn't manage my own health." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the gallery. Someone whispered, "That's elder abuse." The judge's gaze hardened. "This receipt is troubling, Mr. Miller. Unauthorized collection of controlled medication is a violation." Robert spread his hands, palms up, smile twitching. "It was a misunderstanding. Families share responsibilities." The bailiff's heavy boots thudded once as he shifted closer to Robert's table. The sound silenced the room. I wasn't finished. "And now, Exhibit D audio recording." From my folder, I produced a small player, the camcorder tape transferred to digital by Charlie. I pressed play. The tinny speaker filled the courtroom with Robert's voice, slurred slightly with whiskey, but clear enough. "That Thursday, you'll be drooling into a paper cup while I handle everything. That's a win." The gallery erupted. Gasps, whispers. Someone outright said, "Oh my God!" Reporters scrambled to write. The judge slammed her gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" Robert's face drained of color. His hand flew to his tie, adjusting, tugging, his polished calm cracking in real time. That was taken out of context," he stammered, voice rising. "I was joking, Your Honor. A private conversation. You can't seriously—" The judge cut him off again. "This court does not take such statements lightly, Mr. Miller, particularly in light of the financial irregularities already presented." Robert's eyes darted to the gallery, searching for support, but the faces staring back at him weren't amused anymore. They were cold, judging. Neighbors who had laughed at his digs now sat stiff, lips pressed thin. The shift in the room was palpable. I stood taller, the weight of the moment pressing but not crushing. He wanted to bury me in paperwork. Instead, the paperwork is burying him. The gavel cracked again. "Order!" But it didn't matter. The tide had turned. For the first time, Robert wasn't smirking. He was sweating. And I still had more. I drew a breath and pulled the oldest folder from the bottom of my stack. The tab was brittle with age. The paper smelled faintly of dust and toner, like the county clerk's basement where I'd pried it loose. "Exhibit E," I said. "Historical records. County permit scandal, 99 to 2001. Associate counsel of record, Robert T. Miller." The bailiff ferried the copies. The judge flipped pages, stamped memos, complaint summaries. A deposition excerpt where a contractor mentioned Counsel Miller in the same breath as expedited permits and campaign favors. Robert laughed too fast. "Your Honor, this is ancient. I was a junior. I reviewed forms. That's not corruption. That's clerical." "Clerical?" I tapped a paragraph with my fingertip. This sworn statement names you present at a dinner where a cash donation was discussed in exchange for a fast-track inspection. It isn't alone. I lifted another sheet, an old complaint that went nowhere back then, and held it high so the gallery could see the bolded name. Murmurs rose like wind. The judge didn't look away. Mr. Miller, were you present at such a dinner? Robert's smile flickered. Your Honor, I attended dozens of civic events. People talk. It doesn't mean... Let's not rely on memory, I said. Let's hear a witness. The door at the back opened. Charlie stepped in with a stocky man in a cheap suit, hair gone to silver, hands knotted like rope. He removed a ball cap and held it to his chest. Name, the clerk prompted. Al Ruiz, he said, voice rough. Owner of Ruiz and Sons Contracting. Used to be, anyway. Charlie guided him to the stand. Al's eyes flicked to me, then fixed on Robert as if he were sighting down a level. Mr. Ruiz, Charlie began, do you recognize the man at the plaintiff's table? Yeah, Al said. That's Miller. He was counsel for a firm that handled permits when we were bidding county jobs. We met twice, once at a steakhouse off El Camino. He didn't talk prices. He didn't have to. He said words like friendly and cooperative, and we like contractors who respect the process. Then a guy with a folder reminded me the campaign season was coming. Robert shot up. Objection. Innuendo, hearsay. The judge raised a palm. Overruled as to recognition and context. Mr. Ruiz, limit yourself to what you personally observed and did. Al nodded. I delivered an envelope to a dark table after that dinner. To the same man who told me inspections move faster for folks who are team players. The calendar shows our inspection cleared 48 hours later. The man at that table was him. He pointed at Robert. Miller. A ripple ran through the room. The HOA chair put a hand to her mouth. Someone whispered, 48 hours? Channel 7's camera light blinked on. Robert's voice came out thin. Your Honor, this is a disgruntled contractor trying to deflect his own past violations. Violations I pled to, Al cut in, jaw set. Paid my fines. Lost my business. I got no reason to lie about the suit at your table. Charlie handed up a thin packet. Time-stamped reservation logs from the steakhouse, and a calendar entry recovered from county records that matched Al's date. The judge compared them, eyes narrowing. I kept going. Exhibit F, a memo from that same period, penned by R.T.M., recommending expedited courtesy for a list of firms, including Ruiz and Sons. Not a crime by itself, but combined with sworn testimony and timelines, it draws a picture. Robert's knuckles whitened on the table's edge. Your Honor, this is a smear, an orchestrated hit by a bitter ex-cop with delusions and a failing memory. I stepped closer, the wood grain of counsel table, a map under my palm. Delusion don't carry notarized seals, Mr. Miller, and memories don't line up this clean without a clock. The judge lifted her gaze. Mr. Miller, you may respond to the witness on cross. For now, I'll accept Exhibits E and F for their limited historical value on credibility. Credibility. The word landed heavy, right where it needed to. Charlie wasn't done. He called the HOA chair, hands shaking as she admitted the latch had been broken for months, and that Robert liked to make things theatrical. Laughter in the gallery, small but slicing. Then the bank manager, Paul, crisp and neutral, confirming the unauthorized link attempts and the hold note I'd requested. Each witness added a brick. Alone, none would crush a man. Together, they built a wall. Robert tried for swagger on cross. It came out as snarl. Mrs. Dalton, are you an expert on mental decline? He snapped at the HOA chair. No, she said, cheeks coloring. But I'm an expert on our gate. Soft laughter again. The judge's mouth twitched, just a fraction. He pivoted to Paul. Isn't it true families often assist elders with accounts? Paul spread his hands. Within policy, with signed authority. That was not present. My daughter sat like stone, eyes glassy. She'd started the day rigid with Robert's certainty. Now she looked as if she were holding her breath underwater. I willed her to look at me. She didn't. I took out one last sheet before the final wave. The paper crackled like a match. Exhibit G, I said. Adult Protective Services Visit Report, filed by Mr. Carlson after an unannounced inspection of my home. It states no immediate hazards, no criteria for involuntary intervention. The tip prompting the visit was anonymous. The timing was not. The judge read, then looked over her glasses at Robert. Mr. Miller, did you make this tip? He smiled the way cornered men do. As a concerned citizen and family member, Yes or no? The judge said. A vein ticked at his temple. Yes. The word clipped off, sharp as a gavel. The gallery exhaled. One breath, all together. Robert tried to laugh it off. I was worried. He threatens the dog. He gets confused. I did what any ... The report says otherwise, the judge said, and its timing coincides with your petition and the bank attempts. That raises concerns about weaponizing public services for private advantage. He swallowed. The shine on him dulled. For the first time since he'd walked into my kitchen months ago, he looked what he was without the gloss. A man who'd grown used to winning by momentum and mirrors. Channel 7, whispered between rows. Pen scratched. Someone slipped out to call the newsroom. I let the sound fill the room. Let Robert feel it crawl under his collar. Then I set my hand on the last, heaviest folder. The one that had slept at the bottom of my stack like a loaded firearm, waiting for the right second. We've talked about now, I said. We've hinted at then. Let's join the dots. Robert tried to stand and the chair legs scraped, jittery. The mask didn't just crack, it shifted. Your Honor, he said too fast. I move to exclude any further ancient history. Denied, the judge said, voice cool. You put Mr. Hayes' entire life at issue. He's entitled to test yours. Silence pooled. Even the fluorescent hum seemed to dim. I opened the folder. The pages inside were fewer than the ones he'd stolen from my envelope, but they were sharper. A certified copy of an ethics inquiry closed with insufficient evidence, and a handwritten note from a supervisor advising a watchful distance from a list of donors, 2 of whom matched Al Ruiz's calendar. A typed memo, unsigned, referencing expedite for RM's people. And taped to the back, small, almost fragile, was a photograph. A younger Robert at a fundraiser. A contractor's hand on his shoulder. The date stamp bleeding orange at the bottom. I didn't need to wave it like a flag. I let the judge study it. Let Robert see her study it. Be's credibility, she said again, quieter, as if to herself. Then, louder. We'll break for 10 minutes. Counsel. Approach after recess. Her gavel fell. The spell cracked but didn't break. The gallery erupted in whispers. Reporters moved like fish in a current, microphones changing hands. The bailiff called for order that didn't come. Robert pivoted toward my daughter, whispering fast, hands slicing air. She shrank from the motion, eyes locked on the table, fingers white around her purse strap. I turned, and faces I'd known for years did not slide away this time. They met mine. They nodded. A few mouthed Bill, not with pity, with something like apology. Through the tall windows, drizzle traced thin rivers down the glass. Out on the steps, I could almost see the place where the cameras would crowd after the ruling, where the questions would fly. I slid the old folder back into my stack. The edges bit my palm just enough to feel it. The next wave would be the last, and it wouldn't be mine alone. It would be the truth's. The judge returned after recess. The gallery hushed like someone hit a mute switch. Even the buzz of the lights seemed distant. She looked straight at me. Mr. Hayes, you may finish. I stood, slid the final exhibit forward. One sheet. Clean. Sharp. Exhibit H, original recording, full length, not snippets, not context twisted. His own voice. Charlie pressed play on the small speaker. Robert's voice filled the room again, this time unbroken. He's done. Thursday he'll be drooling into a cup while I run everything. It's all mine. The accounts, the house, the business. That's what family is for, stepping aside when told. The silence that followed was heavier than any outburst. Then, like a crack of ice, the gallery gasped. Someone whispered, "He said it himself." The judge leaned forward. Mr. Miller, do you dispute this recording? Robert's face flushed deep red. It was venting. A private joke. Joke, I cut in. Threatening to erase me, steal everything I built, that's your sense of humor? He slammed his hand on the table. You're finished, old man. The gavel cracked. Enough. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. Even my daughter turned at last, eyes wide, the certainty she'd clung to, gone like smoke. The judge's voice cut through. Petition for guardianship is denied. Control of estate remains with Mr. Hayes. This court further refers the matter for review of possible financial exploitation and misconduct. Robert staggered back, tie loose, face crumbling. The grin was gone. The courtroom smelled suddenly of sweat and panic. I turned toward him, voice steady, sharp as a badge. "You buried me with papers, Robert. Today those papers buried you." The words landed like a hammer. Reporters' pens froze mid-line. My daughter covered her mouth, tears sliding. The bailiff's hand rested lightly on Robert's shoulder. Not arrest, not yet, but heavy enough to say, "Soon." The judge rose. Court adjourned. The gavel struck. And for the first time in months, I stood taller, shoulders unbowed. On the courthouse steps, the air smelled of wet asphalt and newsvan cables. Cameras clicked, Channel 7 shouted questions, but I gave them only one line. Today, there's enough truth without me adding more. Neighbors who once smirked at Robert now avoided his eyes. Some even nodded at me. My daughter stood apart, clutching her purse strap like a lifeline. When our eyes finally met, hers were wet. "Dad, I didn't see it, or maybe I did and chose not to. I'm sorry." I didn't answer right away. Max was waiting by the truck, fogging the window with his breath. I just nodded toward her. Doors open. New key. At home, the house sounded different, lighter. The locksmith had changed the deadbolt. The chain clicked into place. I tossed the old keys into a drawer and kept the new set on a bright yellow tag. Laurelwood 195. One turn of the lock felt like closing a chapter. On the fridge, I cleaned the yogurt smear from May's photo. Her smile came back through the haze. For the first time in months, I could look at it without pain. That night, my daughter called. Her voice shook. "I'm leaving him. Not today, but soon. I can't stay." "Don't run away from him," I said. "Run toward yourself. The door here is open. You know it." Later, I wrote one last line in my notebook under the words I'd carved in anger weeks ago. When family tried to erase me with papers, I came back home with my own. Max lay at my feet, warm and steady. The house hummed, fridge, heater, quiet locks. Normal sounds, finally mine again. And that was enough. Family is supposed to be a two-way road. They pushed me off to the shoulder. I had every right to walk my own lane and take back what was mine. If you've stayed with me through this story, hit subscribe right now. There are more truths like this to tell. And leave a comment. What would you have done in my place? I'll be reading everyone.